your favorite episode on this?
And thank you. I don't mean you to have to talk about, deep issues, but... I'm sorry? Oh, the question, sure. The question was, I just was saying that it's okay to ask about MASH. I'm happy to talk about Radar and his teddy bear. For me, the process of being part of that show was beyond compare. My favorite episode of MASH was the interview, the black and white half hour where the documentary crew came in, a la Edward R. Murrow, and did a documentary film in theory about us. I'll tell you a story about that show. When we did 24 episodes a year, and periodically the CBS wanted us to do the 25th, and by that time the writers are brain dead and we're trying to figure out how to do another story. And they had this idea, so they came to us with a pad of paper with questions on it and a little tape recorder and said, would you, in character, just respond to these questions? So we, as an acting exercise, got to write our own scripts for that show. And of course, Larry Gelbart, the genius, took them and made them all work. But it was a fabulous compliment to us as actors. By this time, I had come to understand that this was a company that was really a creative community. From the first day, I had done 2 years on a soap opera and 2 other television series and movies and a number of guest shots on television. But I had been brought up to believe that that the industry believed that actors were dumb as stumps and self-involved and really had nothing to offer except some odd gift, and that if they would simply say their lines and hit their marks and shut up, everybody would be happy. I got to the MASH set on the first day I was at work, and we went through the script, read through the script, which was a treat in and of itself. And then the director said, okay, page 1. And I looked at him quizzically, and he said, oh, Mike, he said, here's where we want to go back through the script page by page and have you, anybody who wants to, offer any questions or comments or suggestions. And I thought, you gotta be kidding me. You want to hear from actors? And they did. And it never stopped. It was a kind of community that one rarely has the opportunity to be part of, and I've been gifted with 8 years of the happiest experience I can ever imagine. So we did that show, and they, as I said, when they did my scene and when we did the other actors' scenes, it was essentially a script that we had written, so we knew what the questions were and what the answers were. But they told Clete Roberts, the newsman who did it, to, at the end of the scripted questions, ask 3 more questions. which required us to extemporize again, only this time on film. And it was really a wonderful, wonderful experience. So I remember the show for all kinds of reasons, but as I watched it, I think that may be the best half hour we ever did. Yes, ma'am?
One of my favorite shows, and found out the person sitting in front of me as well, played last night around midnight, here, Shock, MASH is on somewhere all the time. And it was a show when Radar went home and you wept in Hawkeye's arms about your daughter, Erin, calling Radar Dad when he came through on his way home. Did you, since you have input in the show, did you get to pick the name of your daughter in the series, and was it named after your daughter, Erin?
The question has to do with an episode in which BJ fell apart because after Gary Berghoff decided to leave the show, we did a story about Radar leaving, and then we did a story about Radar going home, and BJ's daughter Peg and BJ's wife Peg and his daughter Erin went down to the pier to meet him as he came off the ship, and because he was wearing a uniform, Erin called him Daddy, and it broke, well, as you can imagine, it broke BJ's heart. And there was the show, they gave me a tremendous opportunity as an actor to go through the rage and the torment and the fear and the anger and the fury and finally weeping. And yes, in answer to your question, when I first came to the show, my daughter Erin was 2.5 years old, and Gene Reynolds came up to me and he said, we want BJ to be married and to have a daughter. Do you have any idea what we might call her? And I said, yeah, I've got a good idea. And then, of course, I have a son, too, so that creates a problem. So when we did the show, I mentioned the interview, and I mentioned in the show, I said to the camera, "I love you, darling Peg, and my daughter Erin, and I love you, sweetheart," I told my son I was talking to him. Yes, sir.
Have you kept in touch with Harry Morgan in his elder years?
I have. Harry's 93, and we had dinner together, he and his wife, and Shelley and I, and Loretta Swit, Hot Lips Houlihan, and Jamie Farr, Corporal Klinger, and Bill Christopher, Father Mulcahy, all and their wives, plus Charlie Dubin, a name you may not know. He was one of our favorite directors on the show. All had dinner together just a few weeks ago, and we do, the bunch of us get together as often as we can. Alan and I don't get to see each other as often because Alan lives on the East Coast and I live on the West Coast, but actually in March I was doing a book event at the book festival in Chralottesville, Virginia, and Alan and Arlene came into the audience during the question and answer period. During the question and answer period, this fellow stood up and he said, "Mr. Farrell." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You've got very big feet." I said, "You know, most major figures in history have very small feet. Winston Churchill had tiny feet. You've got very big feet." He said, I can only think of one popular figure who has such big feet, and that's Goofy. Did you ever play Goofy? And I said, "No, but I worked with him for a while." So we do have fun. Yes, ma'am.
Could you talk about some of the issues that most concern you today in our country?
Well, the issues that most concern me today, I think, are very clear. They are people issues. Issues about how we make this country actually live up to the fundamental principles it articulates and claims to hold dear. I think it's unacceptable that the nation that claims to be the leader of human rights in the world not only kills its own citizens on death rows in this country, but incarcerates them in circumstances that are grotesque and torturous. I also think that it is unacceptable that the President of the United States and those around him have made it clear to their military leaders and them to their troops that it's okay for young Americans to torture human beings based on some need to get information that will somehow resolve problems that we may have in the future. The idea that Americans torture and the American torturers are being acknowledged and that behavior is being acquiesced to in our society is, to me, a sign of the real deterioration, moral and constitutional deterioration of this country. So the big issues, Al Gore is articulating one today. We had a huge issue. My wife called me today and told me that there were 2 tornadoes not far from our home in Southern California. That's unheard of. We know about the destruction in Virginia. We know about the destruction in Texas. We know about Katrina. I mean, things are happening, and for people to put blinders on and suggest that, that's some sort of nonsense put together by, I don't know what, left-leaning kooks who are anti-business or something, is just the worst kind of propagandistic baloney. So we have, I think, a number of things, and your question speaks to something that, people used to say to me, you're involved with the death penalty, you're involved with prison.